Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 8 o'clock club, and a very special welcome to our online guests who, for the first time for the 8 o'clock club, are going to be watching online via a YouTube link. So welcome everybody online. Obviously, with what's going on in the world today, we needed to set this process up pretty quickly. It's been something that's been in our plans for some time, and we've just been given the encouragement to go with it. So we're testing it out tonight, and we'll be looking for your feedback afterwards. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys, the audience here, probably knows what a vision quest is. But I've been fascinated by the idea of the vision quest ever since I first heard about it, and I'm sure a lot of you are quite interested in this idea as well. And tonight we are very fortunate to have Liesl Kruger to teach us about the vision quest. Liesl has studied shamanic practices for a number of years. She studied under Mexican and Brazilian teachers. She has blessings to run some ceremonies, and she's also a counselor. So let's put our hands together and welcome Liesl Kruger.
Thank you very much, Mark, and welcome everyone that braved the virus tonight to be here, and also welcome to all the listeners at home. I'm very excited to be here tonight to share the beautiful teachings of what the Vision Quest is and a lot of things of this path. I was driving here thinking that in many ways a Vision Quest is not that dissimilar to being in quarantine, except that there is no virus threat and that you are in beautiful nature. So I think these times are very good preparation for doing a Vision Quest one day. So what is a Vision Quest? So a Vision Quest comes originally from the Lakota tradition, where when the young men of the tribes came of age, sort of when they went from boyhood to manhood, they would do something which we call a Vision Quest. And they would be put somewhere in a relatively small space, which they were not allowed to leave, and they would sit there for 4 days and 4 nights. And they would, what they call, cry for a vision. That's where the name Vision Quest comes from, and that's often where they receive their name, like he who runs with bears or whatever, because they would often see vision of certain animals. Now, we don't do that in quite the same way today, but it's also a time of self-isolation, working with nature in a way that allows you to dig into and seek a little bit more as to who am I really, and what is my purpose in life, and maybe what is my direction in life. Because we lead very busy lives these days, we don't often give ourselves the opportunity to just sit with ourselves in nature. And it's interesting, often when I talk to people about the Vision Quest, they say, oh yeah, I love being alone. But actually we're never alone, if you think about it. We're either on our phones, or we quickly check Facebook, or we take our dog for a walk, or we make a cup of tea. So in this day and age, our minds and our psyches have become so busy, because everything is so busy, that we're actually always busy with something. And I think this is a really positive thing that this virus has brought, actually, because it's a time for people to slow down, to just do nothing. And it's very important for our health, emotional and physical and mental health, to just take a break and do nothing. And yet we don't ever allow ourselves this opportunity, because we come from a culture where it's almost frowned upon or seen as lazy if you do nothing. So the Vision Quest is basically sitting with yourself in a small space in nature, and you literally do nothing. You don't have a phone with you, you don't have a book with you, you don't have your iPod or your Kindle or anything like that. You're not allowed to speak or sing any mantras, you are just alone. So in this way, it's a very good way also to use this time of the Vision Quest to illuminate yourself. You know, the old Greek people also said, know thyself. The biggest thing, the biggest challenge and the biggest purpose, I think, for us is to really get to know ourselves. And you need to give yourself time to get to know yourself. And often, the reason why I believe the Vision Quest is such a profound shift in people's lives, because you sit there with your thoughts and your emotions, and often a lot of thoughts and emotions come up. And you cannot run to someone and vent about it or talk about it or have anyone else's input. You have to go through it to the other side yourself. And I also think that in this way, by really illuminating all aspects of ourselves, we all have things that we don't like, and we usually just brush these things quietly under the carpet and post another smiley picture on Facebook, because it's a facade that we have towards the world, especially with social media. So yeah, we think, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit selfish, or I gossiped yesterday, but it's okay. But if you sit with yourself, it's an opportunity to really zoom in on these things, and they become clear to you. And I believe the first step in making a shift in your life is to become aware of the things that you need to change. Because without being aware of these things, you will never change them. So we sort of stay in our periphery, or they're under the carpet, and we just carry on rushing and working and meeting friends and doing this and reading a book and working on our computers. And fast forward 10 years, and we're still pretty much the same people that we were 10 years ago, with a few more wrinkles and gray hairs. So I really do believe that if we give ourselves this gift to be alone in nature, that we can achieve profound shifts in our lives. And I've experienced it in my own life and in many lives of people that I've observed going through this process. So, to get into the detail, how exactly does this work? So the lineage that I've been trained in is called the Sacred Fire of Ixtlachlan. And the principal authority of our lineage is someone called Aurelio Diaz Tecpancali, who is stationed in Mexico. And he's one of these guys that has almost in a way like a direct download about how things were, how things were many years ago, how the ancestors did things. And he's brought this together with his Native American contacts. He's brought these things together again in a way that we are able to follow as Westerners. Because in our hearts, doesn't matter if we're Western or Eastern, we're all searching for something in this time. It's not an easy time to be alive right now, but somehow we chose to be here right now, so we can make the very best that we can of this time. So Aurelio lives in Mexico, and this is sort of the source of this lineage. It is also really widely spread throughout the world. So they have Vision Quest in Mexico, of course, in Spain, in Bulgaria, in many areas, most countries of South America, and then our one in Africa. That's been going for, this is the 8th year this year that we have the Vision Quest in Africa. And it's actually a really big honor that we are able to do this right here. And these elders have traveled to South Africa more than once to teach us and to run the Vision Quest, to show us how it's done, so that one day we can take the torch and do it ourselves. So what is very important in this tradition, as in the Native American tradition, is the number 4, because we work with the 4 directions and we work with the 4 elements. So 4 is a really important number, and hence the design of the Vision Quest is such that you do 4 quests in your lifetime. And then each quest has a different number of days. So your first quest is 4 days. Your second quest is 7 days. Your third quest is 9 days. And your final quest is 13 days. So with these quests, you are also taken to a place in a mountain and placed in a certain area, a smallish area, and I'll talk more about that later, and there you sit for your time on the mountain. The first 4 days are always without food or water. So now I can see people going, oh my God, I won't survive without water. Yes, you can. Fasting is not an unfamiliar term anymore. And if you look at the spiritual leaders of the past, like Jesus and Buddha, all these people carried out fasts. And it's a very important thing for our bodies to actually stop the digestive process, that we can actually focus on something else. So by fasting, you actually give yourself the opportunity to not bother your body with everything it has to do while you eat. And it's a beautiful opportunity to completely detox yourself. And for those of you who are more familiar with, I mean, it's become a bit of a buzzword today, and many people are doing this intermittent fasting, where you actually have a very small eating window and you fast for 16 or 18 or sometimes 20 hours a day. So this is basically the same. It's just a little bit taken to the next level. But when you're in the mountain on those 4 days without food or water, it's an astonishing process to go through to observe what happens in your body, because you do go into a bit of a very deep meditative state. So yes, of course you get thirsty, but that's part of it. I think what often happens in life is that we underestimate ourselves all the time, and we accept being mediocre in a way. And we live in a culture of a lot of instant gratification, like, oh, I'm thirsty, I need to have it like now. And the Vision Quest teaches you in many small ways that nothing has to happen now. You can wait 4 days before you have water and you will be fine. Your kidneys would have filtered, your body will be clean, you will be shining. And it's also important when you are very thirsty, for example. That was my thing, like I was really thirsty, not hungry so much. But that you just sit with it and suddenly you almost transcend it in a way. Then you're not thirsty anymore. And I think each time we go through an experience like this, it's like people that have had very traumatic experiences or, survived for 14 days on the ocean in a little raft. We realize that we can actually be much more than we think we can, if that makes sense. So it just helps us to get to that next little step, and then we come out the other side stronger because we know that, yeah, I had this feeling and I was fine, or I had this emotion of anger for 4 days, and just to have the opportunity to be there and sit with it and work with it and come out the other side. So that is your 4 days. Then the next time you quest, say next year, you're going to do your 7 days. So the first 4 days, again, are without food or water. But then on day 5, you receive support in the form of fruit and water. So you have something for the next 2 days. Same if you do your 9-day quest. Then you will receive support in the form of fruit and water on day 5, and again on day 8. And same when you do your 13-day quest. So it's not like you are naked and afraid in the mountain and left there without anything. You do receive support. So that's very important. And it's also, for me, I remember when I received that fruit and water on day 5, the experience of just eating a fruit. And these are things that actually you never forget, like how to be grateful for what we have, how to be grateful when you take that first sip of water. Because we live in a life where you open a tap and there's water, and you go to the fridge and there's a fruit. And it's often in the absence of something that we can really appreciate it afterwards. So that's basically your time on the mountain. So I said that you sit in like a smallish area. So how this works is when you decide to do your vision quest, the first step of preparation is to make something that we call prayer ties. So that means that you have to make 365 prayers. And in this tradition, and in the Native American tradition, and in the shamanic tradition actually, a lot of work is done with tobacco. Like we pray a lot with tobacco. Not in the way that you go and light your Marlboro and have a few drags. But tobacco is the first medicine. It's the first medicine of the people, and it's the most important medicine. So it's often used in ceremonies, and it's used to pray with. So when you make your prayer ties, your prayers for your vision quest, You will cut little squares of 10 by 10 centimeters, more or less, and in each one, you will put a prayer with tobacco. So you have like a little bag with tobacco. Some people like to mix it with lavender or rose petals, but basically tobacco. So you have your little square, you take a pinch of tobacco and you say a prayer and you place it inside the square and you make a little, like a little ghost, you know, it has a little, you make it in a ball and you tie it together. And you end up having a really long line with all your prayers. It's like a lifeline of prayers. And these prayers are then taken with you into the mountain and they are placed around you. So you basically sit for your vision quest inside your prayers. It's also a sign of protection for you. And making these prayers is a really beautiful process. I must say I was like a bit disappointed when I did my 13 days. I was like, oh, no, I can't make these prayers anymore. And it's another thing, like I really think that in today's life we just don't pray enough. And it doesn't matter who or what you believe in. I mean, we can pray to God, we can pray to Buddha, we can pray to Muhammad, we can pray to Great Spirit, anything. It's just to have that connection with the great mystery, whatever you want to call it, and that connection to like spirituality and spirit, to say your prayers. Whether it is for yourself, I mean, you have 365 prayers, so you've got a lot of scope to pray for many things. So you can pray for yourself, you can pray for your friends. I remembered I prayed very much for rain when we had the drought. I said so many prayers for rain. I prayed for my family. I prayed for the world. It's a really beautiful process to sit and consciously say your prayers, if you make like 50 prayers a day. And it's a very beautiful meditation. And then to sit in the mountain with your prayers around you is a very special time. So, you have your prayers, and there are different colors for the different years. So your 4-day, your first quest, your 4-day quest, your little squares will be red. And red symbolizes, it symbolizes the East. And in your first 4 days, you work with humility. Your prayer, your overall prayer is not your little prayers, but it's for humility. And that's quite a big thing because our culture is so ego-based, you know, right or wrong, I'm right, you wrong, he did this, he did that. And suddenly you're taken into the mountain and you're left there. And you just have yourself. So it's a really beautiful process to find humility again and to bring that into your life. Because, like I said, we have a culture of being judgmental and opinionated and fearful, and these are not really characteristics that are that symbolizes humility. Like humility is more of a togetherness, helping each other. So so that's the first one is humility. Then your second year, your 7 days, your prayer ties will be yellow. And the direction of the 7 days that we honor is the south, and it is for purpose in your life. So each time you do your quest, you can go a little bit deeper, as you can see. The first one is for humility. Then the second time you quest, you've sort of gone through the humility part, and then you get to like really reflecting on what's your purpose. And the third year, your 9-day prayers, the color is black, that your squares are, and the direction is the west, and this is for the healing, because the west and the black also symbolizes the physical body. And then your final quest, your 13 days, the color is white, and the prayer is for peace and integrity. So while the people are in the mountain, there's a whole lot happening at what you can call the campsite, where the support group is. So there are lots of people who come to support this vision quest process. And it's also a beautiful cycle, because the ones that climb the mountain this year will maybe support next year. And also if you do your 4 days, people usually stay on and support the ones that are doing their 13 days. So this whole process begins with a ceremony that we call, if you guys have any questions, please interrupt me at any time. It begins with a ceremony which we call the 4 tobacco ceremony, because in that specific ceremony there are 4 prayers with 4 different tobaccos. So we pray for the purpose of the ceremony, we pray for the water and honor the water, we pray for, give thanks to the fruits and the foods of Mother Earth. And all the vision questers and all the supporters attend that ceremony. So it's another beautiful opportunity for prayer, to pray for what you want, for the quest, for your life, for your own vision quest. And then when that ceremony completes, the next morning, there's like a feast to eat, many fruits and things to eat, and then everyone goes into what we call a sweat lodge. So a sweat lodge is very much like, I can only describe it as a traditional sauna. So most of the First Nations of the earth, including the African people, all did sweat lodges. And it's an igloo-shaped structure that's round, and it symbolizes the womb of Mother Earth. And you make a really, really big fire outside, and in the fire there are stones. So the stones get like red hot in this fire. Then everyone goes inside and sits in a circle, and in the middle is a pit. And all the hot stones get placed in the pit, and then you throw water on it. So it's an amazing way to cleanse yourself, even if it's not during a vision quest. We often do sweat lodges because you can rid yourself of anything that doesn't serve you mentally, emotionally, physically. But back to the vision quest, so we have the sweat lodge ceremony, and in that ceremony, the questers are told that from this moment on they're not allowed to speak anymore. So you take the word away, and you're not allowed to look at anyone anymore, because then your quest begins with the cleansing of the sweat lodge. When you come out of the sweat lodge, you change, you gather your things, and everyone walks up the mountain to the designated spots where the questers will be. And say we come to your spot, told that this is your spot, and you are placed there, and around you we put your prayer ties and say that in 4 nights we will come and fetch you, or in 4 nights we will bring support. And then basically you sit there and work with yourself for 4 days and 4 nights, and on the day of the 5th day, the supporters will come again and collect you, come down the mountain, and you go straight into a sweat lodge. And then in the sweat lodge, all the questers get their word back, and you're allowed to share your experience. So it's a beautiful time to share. While you are in the mountain, this group of supporters are not just sitting there. They're working hard to support you, and that's why it's a really beautiful supported process, because not only are you energetically supported, and believe me, you can feel it when you're in the mountain, that you know that these people are there rooting for you, but also every morning and every evening the supporters actually drum and sing. And that's a beautiful thing to hear in the mountain. So you sort of wait for those moments where they sing the songs to each direction while you're in the mountain. And another important thing is that this work and this path is a lot about working with the sacred fire, because the fire is an integral part of everything. So while the people are sitting in the mountain, the fire that was lit for that ceremony in the beginning, that fire keeps burning for 13 days and nights. So you know that while you're in the mountain that the fire is there supporting. And it's often like that. You hit like a bit of a wobbly, or you feel a bit lonely, or you feel cold, and then you actually remember that fire and feel very connected. So there is always someone at the fire, whether it's day or night. One of the supporters is sitting there keeping the fire for the people in the mountain. What can you take with you? That's another question. You cannot take all your creature comforts. In the old days, they said that people took 2 blankets. That's it. One for the ground and one for in case of rain. But we don't have these really natural woolen blankets anymore. So we have to do a bit of a modified Western Cape Union Mart type of vision quest. So what people usually take is a ground sheet, tarpaulin for the bottom, and then something for the top with ropes that are already cut, because there will be trees and things that you can tie your top shelter to, and then as little as possible. So that's also another thing, like people are always freaking out about what to take, but you actually we don't need half the stuff we have in our lives. So for 4 days, for example, you don't really even need to take a change of clothes. You can just take a jacket or a beanie for the night and blankets to sleep on. And what's also good, what a lot of people take is like a sheepskin. And there you go with your little backpack or something, and there you sit for your time of the Vision Quest. So that is like a summary of the process of the Vision Quest, but how this fits into the bigger picture of this lineage and this path is that the Vision Quest is the most important part. Like, if you haven't started your questing process yet, once you've started that process, you really get a better idea of what the Sacred Fire path is about and what this lineage is about, because you really start to get things once you've been there, once you've been to the ceremony, once you've done your 4 days, you have the opportunity to work with the fire, which is a beautiful process in itself, to keep the fire for the questers. It's a really beautiful opportunity to work in community with other people as well, because we do live lives of isolation where we not really allow ourselves to be really open in ourselves to other people, sometimes a few friends. But this is, we prepare the meals together, people work together. It's just a beautiful time together to have the teachings and the wisdoms and the learnings of this path. We have in South Africa, we've got our elders that come from Brazil, so they are affiliated to South Africa with the blessing of Aurelio in Mexico. Beth and Enyo from Brazil have been coming here for the last 7 years, and they carry at the moment the Vision Quest for South Africa. So every year they come from Brazil to lead this process. And because they are such real medicine people with many, many teachings and a lot of wisdom, it's just really good to just be around them and listen to the stories and, listen to the stories of the elders and what they can teach us. So the Vision Quest, like I said, is like the most integral part. And then there are also the ceremony of the sweat lodge that I've described. So that ceremony is not always part of the Vision Quest. Sometimes we just do a sweat lodge as a self-standing event. And then there are also the sacred dances. So as part of this path, you have the sun dance, where you dance for 4 days and 4 nights without food or water. And then you have the star dance, where you dance all night and celebrate the stars. So these are just, everything is designed and structured in such a way that it's an opportunity for us to really, I would say, find ourselves again and find our hearts again and remember how things were in a way that we honor those who came before us, but also the 7 generations that are coming after us. Because in a way, we are really all connected. Like, in a way, we are our own ancestors. So what we do today with our lives affect the next 7 generations. So it's a bit of a brain fry to get around, but I think it is like that. How we act today affects tomorrow in a big way. So if we take this opportunity to work on ourselves so that we can become better people somehow, we influence everyone around us. You know that starfish principle where the girl walked on the beach and there were all these starfish that had come out of the ocean and they were dying on the beach. And she started picking them up one by one and throwing them back into the ocean. And her mum said to her, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're not going to make a difference to all of these starfish. And she said, yes, but to this one I am. And she put it back in the ocean. And that's the thing, like, if we can work on ourselves in a really authentic way, with open hearts, we can change humanity. Because we see people in our lives, the first step is to change yourself. We all want to change the world, but I believe in this way, we can change the world to becoming better people. And for me, there are many different methods of doing this, but what resonates a lot for me is the path of the Vision Quest, and for people who have done this Vision Quest, because it's a very safe and very held and very structured design that have been followed for many, many, many years and is currently being followed in many parts of the world. So it's very contained, and there's nothing dangerous about it, you know. That we can have the opportunity to actually give ourselves the time in nature to reflect on so many things. And I can promise you, when you come off that mountain, you are different than when you were when you went up the mountain. From the insights, from the knowledge, from the greater connection with nature, even just that. You know, all the answers are inside ourselves. And yet what we do is we look for all the answers everywhere else. But it's all here. Or here. So if we just sit quietly in nature and with ourselves, we can shift so many things. We just need to give ourselves the opportunity to do that. And then one more thing that's maybe important to mention is that, you know, we embark on this quest, and our goal is to complete our quest, whether it's 4, 7, 9, or 13 days. But if for any reason you are up there and you want to come down and leave the quest, of course you can do that. Because sometimes not completing is part of our process. So that's also an important thing to be able to realize that I can't do this, my body can't do it, I can't do it, to honor the fact that it's not the right time for you. To then come back where you will be received, no questions asked, no fingers pointed, and you'll be given water and you can join the supporters. So for me, this path has taught a lot just about really being humble in front of this incredible lineage that we can follow, in front of the fire, having the opportunity to interact with others in a really authentic way, having nothing to prove, a place where we can all be ourselves, where it's a really safe place too to be vulnerable in front of each other, because we are all the same. We are all exactly the same. We are just we different in our individual characteristics, but we are all the same. And this is something that this work has really taught me. It doesn't matter where we come from, or from which culture, or from which area, we are all the same as humans. So how amazing to have a place where we can gather, irrespective of our race or our background or our culture, and we can just do something amazing together so that we can all be victorious together. So that's more or less a very long talk, but does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so during the time when you were in the square,
Yes.
what would you be doing for the 4 days straight?
All I can say is you just sit there.
You're not allowed to leave.
No, you're not allowed to leave your space.
No toilet break.
You can, on a practical level, dig a little hole in the one corner, but you're not eating, so it's not such a big issue. But yeah, I think if you're a guy, you can just go over your little prayers, but you're not allowed to leave your square. And then you basically sit in meditation and watch time pass very slowly, sometimes very fast. And that's the challenge for most of us. It's not the eating or the drinking. It's just, people call it boredom, but it's not really boredom. It's more like a frustration, like the time just does not pass, but that's what you need in that moment. Yeah.
There's a question online from Pierre. He wants to know how you started on your path.
I started on my path about 15 years ago by working with plant medicine, and specifically the medicine of ayahuasca. And through that, I met these elders from Brazil. And then they first came to South Africa bringing the medicine of ayahuasca. And then 7 years ago, when they received the permission to run the Vision Quest, we started the Sacred Fire, or the Red Path work, as we call it. So then, for me, it just really resonated with me. So I, of course, did my 4 days, not having nearly as much information as you have now, but embarked into this leap into the unknown. And sometimes that's the best way to do things, when you think like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing? It's your heart speaking, right? When you just find yourself in a place where you sort of, oh, I don't know these people. But anyway, I did my 4 days, and then of course I completed my quests, and I've completed my sun dances, and I just wanted to immerse myself more in this path, because I could see the profound impact that it had on my life and the lives of others that I saw do this. And that's why I also traveled to Mexico and to Brazil a few times to learn more and to be given permission to do certain ceremonies. Does that answer your question, Pierre?
There's another question coming through online. If you could repeat perhaps the purpose of the 7-day quest and just another summary of the 4 quests.
Yes.
And what they're for.
Yeah. Okay, so just on that note, you have to start with your 4 days. Some people have said, can I start with my 9 days? Can I start with my 13 days? You have to start at the beginning, because it's a process. And in each quest, you are preparing yourself for the next one. The 4 days is the color red, and it honors the direction of the east, and the prayer is for humility. And the 7 days is the color yellow, it honors the direction of south, and the prayer is for your purpose. And the 9-day is the color black, and it honors the color west, and the prayer is for the healing. And the 13-day is the color white, it honors the direction north, and it is for integrity and for peace.
Why is it specific time? So why is it 4 days, and why is it 7 days? Why is it 9 days?
Yeah, so all these things have meaning. So the 4 days are the 4 directions. The 7, there's also actually 7 directions, because it's the 4 directions that we know. And then there's like what we honor in this path. The other 3 is the earth, the sky, and your heart. So those are also directions. And then the 13 days, for example, is the 13 moons. It honors that cycle. And the 9, it's not coming to me right now, but it also is significant in a number of ways as well. So that's the design. Mm-hmm. No one else has another question?
We've
You're-
got a
we're all
request
gonna
from
quest.
somebody online that somebody would love to have an evening where a number of graduates share their experiences. But perhaps you could share your experience of your first Vision Quest.
I can share all my experiences because I will never forget them.
Please
So
do.
my first quest, like I said, is like, ooh, here we go on a Vision Quest. And what came up for me a lot was anger. Because I was like thinking, oh, this is so stupid, like why am I here? I could really spend my time better, you know, like. And it took me 3 days of sitting with these feelings. And somehow I didn't leave my spot. Because it was also like the pride of like, I'm not leaving here. And it was only, I think, deep into the quest that I realized, but who am I actually angry at? Because I chose to be here. And that was like a really big lesson for me for life, because often like we like project and we like angry with everyone, and then you realize, but I chose to be here. I chose to come here. I chose to. So that was my 4 days, and also I understand why the 4 days are a big thing for humility, because like I said, you know, you're all together and everyone's excited, and then you just get like dumped there, and you like think like, they just leave me here. So you have to put up your little tarpaulin. and sit there, and it feels like, oh, no one cares about me, because we don't check on the questers. They can come down at any stage, right? And then also on my 4 days, on the morning of the 5th day, when the first bird chirped, I was ready to leave. I had my stuff all packed up, and I was ready to leave. And they came like in the afternoon. And and now you've packed up all your stuff. So a second wave of anger came, and looking back, like those hours, those final hours were the most important part of my quest. Because then I was like so angry again, like it's half the day gone, and like, da-da-da. So that was my 4 days, very important lessons. My 7 days for me was a bit more peaceful. Someone very close to me had actually passed away just before my 7 days, so I spent my 7 days crying. But that was a very, like, when do we ever give ourselves the opportunity to even do that? You know, to make space for grief. So that was a very important time of my life, to just have that time and just be with that emotion with no distractions. Because I think we often suppress everything, and then that's what I believe why we get sick and why we get like in ill health, is because we don't, doesn't mean you have to wallow in sadness or emotion, but you need to work through it. So I think that was very important for me at that time. And then my 9 day, you know, it gets a little bit easier. The 4 days are always like, you always have the thirst and the settling in. 9 days for me was quite peaceful. I remember that when you become quiet, nature responds really beautifully. So I had this family of mice that visited me every day, and I would share my fruit with them. And you know, for me, 9 days was much more being immersed in nature and the routine of the day, like of the animals and the birds. You know, this bird sings at this time, and then these little mice would come in the afternoon, and they would always come from here and then move there. Very a feeling of much harmony in nature. So my first 3 quests I did in South Africa, and then I went to Brazil to do my 13 days. And that was also a very tough quest for me, because my dad wasn't well at the time, and my husband had just broken his ribs, and we have 8 dogs, and he couldn't even bend down to feed them, and I was really feeling a bit anxious, like, should I cancel, like something's going to happen to my dad. You know, we make up all these stories. And my first 4 days in Brazil were really tough, because, you know, it's tough not to know what's happening to anyone. That's also a thing. Like, we're so used to like WhatsApp, those things don't exist. And I was convinced that my dad had died and that my husband wasn't coping. And then the elder who comes to South Africa too, her name is Beth. She came for the first visit. So when they come and visit you, they say some words to you, and then you have a chance to speak. And I remember I was just like, and she just said to me, you have to stop trying to control things and trust the process. Trust more. And you know, when someone says something and the penny drops like really loudly, and after that I totally settled down, and I really enjoyed my 13 days. Look, it's a long time, but it was also a beautiful time. So we could have a Zoom meeting where everyone in South Africa who has completed, everyone has many stories, I'm sure, about trying to sleep with a rock in your hip and a tree like sliding down. On my 13 days, I was on a bit of a slope, so I woke up every morning with my feet outside my space, and you know, it just teaches you to be, shows you how resilient we actually are. Like, you're going to be fine.
We've got another question coming from the internet. Anne wants to know about ayahuasca, and if one can do it in South Africa, if it's legal, if it's safe. Maybe you can just share your thoughts and opinions about that.
So I've worked with ayahuasca for 14 years, and I very often do ceremonies with the medicine of ayahuasca. And it has actually been tested by customs a few times and returned, because they can't find anything that's classified as illegal, because it's just a combination of 2 plants. So of course one wouldn't want to advertise this widely, but the only plant medicine that is classified as illegal in South Africa is mushrooms at the moment. Yeah.
So Pierre wants to know if there's still a place for ayahuasca in ceremonies, and when would one make use of this?
Of course, ayahuasca is the greatest teacher. So while we're on the plant medicine subject now, so we also work with these plants during the Vision Quest ceremonies, so mostly with the medicine of peyote, which is a cactus from Mexico, and then ayahuasca, and then the cactus of San Pedro, which grows widely. So just the best way I can describe the medicine of ayahuasca specifically, it's like 10 years of psychotherapy in 4 hours. So it really, it's not only an amazing teacher. I'll tell you why I say that, is because the active ingredient in ayahuasca is something called dimethyltryptamine, DMT, and that is a substance, or a, I don't know what you call it, a component, that is present in the human body always. But when you die and when you are born, it's released in astronomical quantities, because that's when you cross the veil, right? When you come from spirit into this world. And when you work with a medicine like ayahuasca, where the active ingredient's DMT, that's when you see, you know, because now you take this big quantity of DMT, so you can work with that. You can work with things that's not limited by your, you know, we're very limited as humans with our emotions and our thoughts and our senses, and you know, I think we experience like a fraction of what is really out there. But when you work with the plants, you just see much more, or you have deeper understanding of so many things. Ayahuasca's taught me a lot about just gaining deeper understanding, and then on another level, it's also an amazing, these plants are amazing healers too. You know, not only, like I believe, I have a very holistic view of disease and illness, is that everything is related. So any physical disease that manifests as its origin, maybe in an emotion or in a mental aspect of your life. And when you work with the plants and you address the emotional/mental, the physical will probably not manifest. And like I said, we often suppress a lot of things. And when you work with the plants, your filters are gone, because it goes straight there where you need it. Like if you need to grieve, you will cry for 2 hours. If you need to scream and rage, you will do that. And then you shift the energy every time. I can talk about this for like 4 hours, so I'll stop there. So just a final note, the Vision Quest 2020 in South Africa was scheduled for the 4th to the 18th of April. But actually today we took the decision to reschedule that for September. So for those of you who are thinking of questing, now you have 5 months to prepare. 5 months to do your prayer ties instead of 2 weeks. So for everyone that's interested, this is perfect for you guys. So if you are interested, please get in touch. How would they do that, Mark?
If you can perhaps share your details now, and
Okay.
we'll also send an email to everybody who's attended live and online with
Okay.
your contact details and the details of the upcoming event.
Okay, perfect. And if anyone is interested, then you can just get in touch and we can have a chat, and I can send you all the information on email, and you can join the Facebook groups. And I also, you can have a look at my website. I do a lot of this type of work, about an hour from Cape Town, working with all the medicines. So it's in the sort of Paul Malmesbury area. Yeah. It's about an hour from Cape Town CBD. So we have a space there that's dedicated to this work. So there might be a small break in ceremonies just while this virus runs its course, but then, yeah, there'll be other things happening. So my number is 083 280 8060, and my email is Liesl, and the spelling you need to take care of. It's Liesl, Liesl, at spiritusvictoria.org. SPIRITUS Victoria.com. And the website is www.spiritusvictoria.com.
And we'll send an email with those details to everybody tomorrow.
Perfect.
We've got one more question coming in from online if you've got time.
Yes.
Is there a relationship between the plant medicine and the Vision Quest? Do you do plant medicine on the mountain?
Yes. So in the For Tobacco ceremony, the ceremony that is the opening ceremony for the Vision Quest, we do work with the plants, peyote, because it comes from the lineage. So it's and it's really beautiful to work with peyote because they are tiny little cacti that grow really, really slowly in the desert in Mexico. So it's quite a privilege to be. You don't often find that in any other ceremonies, specifically not in South Africa. So I work with peyote and San Pedro and sometimes ayahuasca. But in that ceremony, the quantities are small because, you know, sometimes with ayahuasca, it's more like a deep personal experience. But in this ceremony, it's a lot about being present and focusing on the Vision Quest. So you're not going to have like a wild trip. And then on your 5th day on the mountain, you will receive with your fruit, you will receive 1.5 liters of really weak peyote. And that's a beautiful time because you're so clean from the 4 days of not eating or drinking to really work with the medicine. So it is very much part of the Vision Quest tradition, but very contained, very small amounts. It's more to open your heart than have like a wild geometric patterns like crying, like ayahuasca can do that. So it's not so much about that. There are other ceremonies that's more catered for that type of experience. Good. See you on the mountain.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, some really interesting information then. Really sort of piqued my interest a lot. I'm going to give this some serious thought. And we really appreciate your time this evening and for sharing your experience with us. So let's just give Liesl another round of applause. Thank you. Okay, just a few announcements. Upcoming events. Next week we have an event called the vagus nerve, the key to your health. So if you're interested in that, come along either in person or subscribe to watch online the live streaming event next weekend. And we have some interesting events coming up in April as well. So make sure you stay in touch, get onto our mailing list and onto our Facebook page, and we'll be announcing those shortly. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.